Let's go to the Women's History Association. Let's try to really recruit for diversity. You still will have somebody say, like, well, if we pay attention to that, are we sacrificing quality? And it's kind of like, really? Are we really still having that conversation? Yeah. Like, do I really need to be the one to be the one in the room to explain? Like, why? So things like that are... It is what it is. It is what it is. We didn't call it microaggressions. So there's a language for that. Now, when I was growing up or whatever, what we now call microaggressions was just, life. It was just dealing with people and moving on and like finding a way to move on without internalizing it and having it give you an ulcer, which is hard. So I come back to love and support, encouragement. And I've just been very fortunate. I've had that in abundance.
Hello, welcome to On My Mind, the podcast featuring yours truly, Michael Martinez. Congratulations on making it to the end of the semester, especially to all the first generation college students out there. This week, I'm joined by Miguel, who's been on the show a couple of times now. How you doing?
Pretty good.
Hello?
Pretty good.
Okay, cool. Our special guest today is an associate professor of Africana Studies and History here at Bowdoin College. I took this directly from his website. His scholarship falls generally within the field of U.S. history, with specific concentrations in African American history, urban history, and the civil rights and Black Power movements. Born and raised in Coney Island, Brooklyn, much of his work centers around the legacy of racial activism in New York City. We welcome Dr. Purnell to the show. How's it going?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Nice. Oh, we got the live audience.
Yeah.
All right. So today we have some questions from me and from those who submitted questions on Instagram. Be sure to follow us at OMM the podcast to participate in these kinds of Q&As and more. And with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Let's just get this show started.
Let's go.
I got some general questions for you. This is what Miguel sent in on the Instagram. You can go ahead and ask it.
Oh yeah. What's your favorite color today? Or word? Or both?
Oh, this is taking me back to the summer. Yeah. That's
I've been wanting to know.
Oh yeah, my baby girl used to ask that all the time. My favorite color today is sunset orange. I saw this amazing sunset the other day and it was just beautiful and brilliant and powerful and I loved it. And so that's my favorite color. And my favorite word is finished because I finished teaching today. So
yeah, your last class.
I had my last class of the semester.
That's nice.
Just taught it. And so that's my favorite word, finished.
Finished. Yeah. Well,
do you speak? Oh, you can go.
I was gonna jump on to the next question.
Oh no, I just wanted to know if do you still do that journal thing where you like write a word every day?
Oh, I write words that I don't know the definition of. I still do that.
Okay.
I don't do it every day because one of the good things of that practice is the more you do it, the better, the stronger your vocabulary. So
the less you have to.
Yeah, I think the last word I had to look up was obliquely. Obliquely, which means coming at something from a different angle.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So that was the last word I looked up the definition and wrote it down in my word journal. Yes.
That's cool.
Now that we've officially established to everyone that I am probably the biggest dork you'll ever meet.
Well, I host a podcast. I don't know. That's pretty dorky.
This is amazing. You did this. You've been doing it. I think it shows your entrepreneurial side. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And, put it on your resume.
It is on my resume.
Okay.
On May 25th, it's going to be my 2-year anniversary of doing the show.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. But anyway, I wanted to ask, you said your favorite word was finished because you finished teaching. How long have you been teaching?
I taught my first section of a college class I was supposed to teach my first section. In graduate school, the graduate students lead the discussion sections. And I was supposed to teach my first discussion section on September 11th, 2001. That was when I was supposed to teach my very own group of college students in a discussion section. Was supposed to be that day. So if I consider that teaching, obviously I did not have my class that day. I attended graduate school at New York University, which is in the Village, which is about a mile away, straight line, mile away from the World Trade Center site. So I did not teach that day, but since fall of 2001 until the end of spring 2022. So I would say 21 and a half, 20 and a half years I've been a teacher.
That's longer than I've been alive.
Yeah.
I know. No, that's amazing though. Wait, so for the grad, I didn't even know that's what you do in graduate school. So is this like you just come up with whatever you want to talk about, or does it have to like pertain to something?
Yeah. So or at least where I went to graduate school and what I did as what they called a teaching assistant, a TA, the professor designs the class and you as the TA basically do a lot of the work. You do all the grading. Yeah. And you lead the discussion sections. And all the professor really does is come in and lecture. And then the professor works with, and you also, as the TA, you meet with the students. So the students in research universities that have teaching assistants in the course, they don't go meet the professor. They come and meet the graduate student.
Whoa.
Yeah. So we graded all the papers. We graded all the exams. We led the discussion sections at least once a week. And we held office hours to meet with the students to talk about their work in the class. So all the professor does is lecture, and we work with the professor to implement the professor's curriculum.
It's a lot of work.
It was.
Making me rethink
from like what
school.
a TA is now, or like at least here at Bowdoin.
Well, Bowdoin doesn't have graduate students. Bowdoin doesn't give. Bowdoin doesn't give graduate degrees. So the professors here, we do the teaching and advising work.
Yeah. I mean, which makes sense too, because it's a smaller school, like, because with NYU, you would imagine that professors don't have enough time for all of those students. But yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Another question. If you weren't teaching, what other career or passion can you like see yourself pursuing?
Wow. That's a great question.
making him rethink his whole life. No.
I've at different points, even since becoming a teacher and a historian, I've wanted to get a law degree. I don't know if I could have seen myself, although I didn't know it at the time, being a defense attorney, a criminal defense attorney. I think that could have been a career that I would have found satisfying, especially a public defender. Some of my favorite people that I've ever met in my life are public defenders. I think that they're heroes. So I in another life, I hope I would have been a public defender or a civil rights attorney. Oddly enough, I think I could be a really good accountant. Yeah, I don't know. I really get into when we do our taxes with the accountant. It's really boring, but I think I could be really good at that.
Yeah. The competition for who's most dorky.
Yeah.
No, I'm
Purnell 2, Michael 1.
Yeah. I'm winning.
Yeah, he's winning.
But yeah, so those are two things that I
mean, that's totally fair. I mean, right now I'm kind of like thinking computer science, working at like a tech company or something. The podcasting, I kind of want to carry into my adult life as well. I kind of see myself like making a little home studio, like on my couch, camera, and then just have like the mics you'd hold in your hand, and then just have guests on the other side of my couch and just have conversations. That's kind of what I see like myself doing like 20, 30 years from now.
That's great.
Yeah. So I'm here to stay.
And the other journalist, I think I couldn't.
Yeah.
Journalist.
I would have liked to have been a journalist. I tried it a little bit in undergrad and I didn't like it, but I think I gave up on it too quick. I really like writing. And the type of writing that I would like to do more of is the type of writing that journalists do. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. So now it's kind of like moving on to a different section of questions. How was it like growing up in Brooklyn?
It was good. I lived in a section of Coney Island that was really close to the beach. You know, the section of Brooklyn where I grew up was right near there's a boardwalk down there and a beach, and about half a mile away from me is this amusement park area. Yeah. So in the summertime where I grew up was a lot of fun. We'd go to the beach. There's a lot of basketball, and in New York City, people play handball. I don't know if people play that.
Is that with like the small one?
It's like, with a rubber ball.
And the wall.
You play it against the wall. And it's kind of like paddle. I don't even know. Racquetball, I guess, but outside. So we played a lot of handball, played a lot of basketball, went to the boardwalk, went to the beach, actually went in the ocean. If we had a little bit of money, we might go ride the Cyclone. That's a wooden roller coaster.
Yeah. Oh, I've heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's one of the oldest wooden roller coasters, I think, on the East Coast. So summer times were a lot of fun. And, there were a lot of kids around where I grew up. I grew up in these, like kind of building like apartment complexes. So there were always kids around, and we used to ride bikes a lot. That's one thing I remember, getting on your bike and just going. Like we would literally say like, let's see how far we could ride in Brooklyn. And we didn't wear helmets back then, which is scary to think about.
Anyone does.
Yeah. So we would just ride around all day, which sometimes could get dicey, right? Like Brooklyn and a lot of cities are, like you don't want to go into the wrong place where people don't know you. So sometimes those adventures could end with getting chased out of an area or getting things thrown at you. But it wasn't I had a good childhood. I didn't grow up afraid of, violence outside my door, like in the neighborhood, as a rule. I mean, the times were kind of violent. The city was tense in the 80s and 90s. There were things to worry about, like drugs and, getting robbed or getting jumped was what we called it. Like, again, if you were in the wrong place and you had your bike, like you might leave there without your bike because somebody took it. But things like, it wasn't like, it wasn't, at least where I lived and when I lived, it was not really, like dangerous gun violence, worrying about losing your life if you go to the playground or something. Like that's not where I grew up. And other places in New York were like that. Parts of New York where my cousins lived were like that, but not where I lived. So I think I had a good childhood.
Yeah. Do you like keep in touch with any like childhood friends?
I keep in touch with one guy that I went to high school with. That my longest friend, oldest friend that I keep in touch with consistently and that we've grown together over the years, I would say, is a guy that I met when I was about 14. So I've known him for 30 years. I'm 44 now. He's one of my best friends. We've been really tight for 30 years through marriages, having kids, life stuff, divorce, parents getting sick, him going to war.
Oh, wow.
He's in the military. So, it's been amazing to have a friend that long, and to grow together. So that's my oldest friend.
Have you ever learned to like pop a wheelie on a bike?
Yeah, but I can't hold it up. You know how you can see people who pop the wheelie and they stay riding on one wheel? You ever seen that?
Yeah.
I can't do that. No.
I know how to, like if you go fast enough on the bike, you just let go of the handlebars.
Oh,
It's like unicycle, but with two wheels.
That I can do. I can ride with no hands.
Yeah, no hands.
I can ride with no hands.
Does that give me another point?
I think we're tied now. We're tied now. The dork-o-meter reading has us tied. Yeah.
All right. So anyway, so how did you become interested in like Africana studies and history, and like what made you want to teach it?
I was in college, much like both of you, but I did not do as well my first year as I'm sure both of you have done. I really struggled my first year in college, especially my first semester. I didn't know what to study. I didn't know how to pick classes. And I just thought if I picked a program within the college that had everything planned out, then I would be okay. And so the pre-med program was like that. And then I said, well, I'll become a physician. That's a good job. Like, why else did you go to college except to become a doctor? Right. So I said, I'll be pre-med, and pre-med did not go well for me, especially the first semester. I was almost failing 2 classes, the chemistry class and the chemistry lab. It was miserable.
Yeah, no, I get that.
So eventually the first semester was rough, but I passed everything, which is I'm really proud of that. The second semester was a little bit better, but once I dropped out of the pre-med program, I was very confused. Like I was really did not know what to do and how to do it. So I kind of had to be a little patient, and I took classes. I started to do better in them. And I realized that I had always done well in history classes. So I just took more of them. And then one day, the teacher gave a research assignment, and the professor suggested that if we wanted to, we could go to this library in Harlem. I went to college in the Bronx at Fordham University. And the professor said, well, if you want to do research with like special sources in this archive, he called it, you can go to this special library in Harlem called the Schomburg Center. It's called the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture. And I said, okay, like, all right, I really like this. I would like to try that. And the subject of my paper was African-American soldiers in the Civil War in the Union Army. And the Schomburg Center had sources, primary sources, journals, letters that related to that topic. I said, let me go there and look at some of this stuff for my paper. And I got there when it opened, and I stayed there all day. I kind of like lost track of time, really. And then the librarian said, all right, it's time to go. And I wasn't finished. I wanted to go back. And as I was leaving the library, which is on 135th Street and Malcolm X Boulevard, Lenox Avenue, 7th Avenue. It was a beautiful fall day. It was cool out. The sun was setting, and I was getting in the subway, and I was just like, I could do this every day and be happy. I thought it was the most fun that I had ever had doing anything school related. Yeah. So that kind of got me thinking about, first of all, studying history, and African-American history was what really excited me at that time. And then I guess I took another class. It was the part 2 of that class. And that teacher, that guy, the teacher in that class, his name is Mark Nason. And the first teacher's name was Claude Mangum. They taught African-American history 1 and 2. And it was Professor Nason who said, he pulled me aside and he's like, what do you want to do? And obviously I wasn't going to be a doctor. And so I said the other thing that I thought people went to college to become. I said, I guess I'll be a lawyer, but I didn't know before I said I would be a public defender. I didn't know what that was. I just said I'd be a lawyer because, my parents didn't go to college. I didn't know a lot of people who were college graduates when I was a kid. Nobody I grew up around went to college. Like none of my family members that I grew up with on a regular basis, nobody in my neighborhood went to college. It was all, my mother's a secretary and my father, well, they're retired, but my mother was a secretary and my father was a transit worker. Yeah. And so I grew up around like firefighters, cops, postmen, maintenance men, like nobody did white collar work.
Right.
So either going to college was be a doctor, be a lawyer. I wish I knew some investment bankers because then I might have been like being a banker, but I didn't know what that was. So I told the guy, I guess I'll be a lawyer. And he was like, why don't you become a college professor? You're really good at this. And I was like, well, what is that? And how do you do it? And he's like, well, you got to get a PhD. He's like, but if you get a PhD and then you get this job, he's like, it's the best job in the world because you can teach what you want. And if you work your ass off after 10 years or so, you'll get tenure and you can never get fired.
Yeah.
So again, like my dad was a union transit worker and job security was the most important thing for him. Yeah. Like, so I was like, oh, you could never get fired and you could do what you want. Like, all right, I'm going to try this. So that's how I mean, teaching is a little different. I learned in that's how I thought about being a professor.
Right.
Teaching came in some other experiences, which I can speak about if you're interested. But
absolutely. So I don't know if you know, but I plan to major in education and become maybe a teacher or professor in the future.
I didn't know that. So being a professor and being a teacher are not the same things in some ways. But so being a teacher, for me, I really liked my high school. I went to an all boys Jesuit, which is a type of Catholic priest high school, Xavier High School in Manhattan. I had a very positive experience there. And even though, I did really well in high school, I sometimes think like, why was I such a fish out of water in college if I came out of this pretty good academic school? And really it was, I never knew how to connect what I was doing academically in high school with like career path.
Right.
That's why college was a little bit of a learning curve for me. I didn't know how to take academic learning and turn it into a job or a career. But I think in high school, here's what I remember. I had great teachers. It was the first time in my life where I had teachers who were like generally excited about ideas. I couldn't articulate that when I was in it. It was only after that I realized that these were special, mostly men, but a few women who were excited about ideas. They were excited about learning. They made me excited about learning. And I saw from them that a teacher could be somebody who shared difficult information in exciting ways and help people to become excited to learn both things that were outside of them by tapping into what was inside of them. Again, I wouldn't have put it that way, but my teachers in high school did that, or special ones did. Brother, he was a Jesuit brother. Chris Derby, English teacher my freshman year. John Garvey, he was a priest, religion teacher my freshman year. Joe Sweeney, my American AP U.S. history teacher junior year. John Foley, my senior religion teacher. Father Corcoran, I forget his first name, a science teacher I had freshman year and senior year. Like these were incredible educators, teachers, thinkers, and they just really cared. And that kind of got me thinking like, this looks like fun.
Yeah.
So I had and then I did some volunteer work in college. I grew up Catholic and I went to mass pretty regularly throughout my life. And my mother taught in our neighborhood parish what the Catholics call CCD, religious instruction. So she always did that at our parish. And I never thought of it until I'm talking about it now. I guess she was a teacher in some ways. I mean, it was like volunteer.
Yeah.
So I actually did that 1 year in college. I taught at the local parish. I taught religious instruction to fifth graders in the Bronx. And I thought they were hilarious. I thought they were the funniest kids. Like, to try to teach them, like religious instruction, they would say whatever was on their mind. Like you would be trying to teach them about, the resurrection. Yeah. And one kid would be like, how could that happen? How could he be dying? And I'd be like, how am I supposed to explain this? And I was like, that's a good question. Yeah. Yeah. So that was my first teaching experience, and I loved it. I thought they were funny. I loved their curiosity. I liked working to try to explain things to them. Mm. So I really liked how I felt when I was a teacher with younger people, and I did various versions of that. So that's kind of how I thought, all right, I could be a teacher. And then the guy's like, well, you could be a professor, which involved teaching, but it also involves scholarship. Right. And so I was like, I want to try to find a way to combine these two things.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's pretty.
So it's just kind of like all these things, just, it was not like one specific moment. It was just a collection of all these experiences you had. And that's kind of just like you found yourself here and now you're a professor at Bowdoin. Yeah,
for sure. It was not one thing. I did not study education. I thought about some programs for education later in college, like as a junior and a senior. But I really pursued, by my senior year, I really said, all right, I'm going to try to get this PhD thing. I'm going to try to do this professor route. And that teacher, that professor, Mark Nason, was, I can't even really put into words how influential and supportive he was. There were a lot. I had a really great team of professors, Claude Mangum, Mike Latham, Mark Nason, Irma Watkins Owens, Marianne Kowaleski, these were Dan Sawyer. These were incredibly supportive and smart and helpful mentors. But what Nason did for me, again, as a working class kid who, I don't know, the idea of go get more school. One of the things he did was he said, if you want to become a professor, you got to get a PhD, which means you got to keep going to school for 6 years. And then you have to try to get a job. And he's like, and the chances of you getting a job are small. It's really competitive, he said. So he's like, so if you want to do this, he's like, you got to be a little crazy. He's like, are you crazy? And I mean, so the kid from Brooklyn, and again, I think, but if somebody, it was like a challenge. And if you I grew up, if someone challenges you, either you step up or you back off. Right. So I was like, oh, this guy's challenging me in an arena where I think I got some flex, right? I think I could. So I was like, yeah, I'm crazy. So what's now? So he really took me and some other and showed her. He organized lectures and he invited us. So we met all these scholars and we had dinner with them. And, he just did all of this stuff for us to encourage us to become professors. And for me, it worked.
Wow. Yeah. Connections, networking is totally key.
Yeah.
Yeah. So someone wanted to know, I think Hillary asked this question. She said, what did your mom want you to be? Or like, I guess like, what did your parents have a different like vision for you in terms of like a career, or did they just like let you go to school and like kind of figure it out?
My parents had no real involvement in my, what did my parents want? I don't know. They never said anything. They never steered me in one particular direction directly. Like they didn't have a heavy hand on that. They didn't even really tell me I had to go to college. Like that was not an assumption in my house. So it's tough to answer that. I don't want to answer it like, I definitely think I picked up particular paths or aspirations because of them, because of their example. Like, for example, my father is a vet. He was in the military. After he graduated from high school, he joined the Marines. And then when I grew up, he was in the reserves, the Army Reserve. He was in the Army Reserves for like 30 years, even after he served in the Marines. So, I mean, like for a lot of my childhood, I was like, I'm gonna join the service, you know? So I talked to him about that, and he always kind of said, well, if you join the service, you should try to become an officer and this, that. But he never was like, yeah, you should do that. I thought a lot about trying to work for the transit. I mean, it's kind of weird. Like he didn't say to do that, but I was like, oh, my dad has a job and he has healthcare and he has good benefits. Like that could be a good job. So I actually applied to go to the high school that trained New York City kids to work for the transit authority, but I didn't wind up going there. So I don't know. They never told me to do something. They never really were involved in that. They never said like, you need to become this, you know?
I feel like, I think the way my parents are, it's more like whatever you do will be there to support you. But it's like, you know what you want to do, you go do it. And like, they'll always be there. And so I feel like a lot of, especially like first generation college students have that like similar kind of background as to like why they're even going to college and that kind of stuff. And so like, that's why I really like this question, because I wanted to see. And I mean, I can kind of relate to that.
Yeah, I think that sounds right. Like I always knew my parents loved me. I always knew they supported me. You know, my father was not happy when I said I wanted to go to Catholic high school. He wasn't pissed, but he was displeased because my parents sent my brother and I to Catholic elementary school, which cost money. And my brother went to public high school. So when I told him that I was going to go to Catholic high school, he was kind of like, how much is that going to cost? Yeah. And when I told him, and it was a lot of money for us, it was at the time, it was a lot. It was $6,000 a year. And he sighed and he's just like, well, you better get good grades. He's like, you better not mess around. Yeah. So that was like my motivation in high school to do well, was to not piss my father off, because he worked very hard. He worked at night. He worked, my entire life for 36 years, he worked at night. Either the 11 to 7 or 12 to 8 or 10 to 6. Much of my teenage years was waking him up to go to work. He never slept more than 4 hours in a row. And he always had like a side job. Like he'd always do something on the side. I spent a lot of weekends, like he would sometimes work for a mattress delivery company. And, like if there was nothing, he would be like, hey, you want to come with us? And I would ride around in a van with him all day, delivering mattresses throughout the city. He would do like side electrical work because he's an electrician. He sometimes worked for a grocery distributor, like unloading vegetables for all grocers to come and pick it up and drive it throughout Brooklyn. He always had a side job. And so, I think I got a lot of work ethic from that, but he never gave career advice, really. And so trying to figure out what to do in college was tricky. But so thankfully I had other kind of, seriously, like parental figures. Like I think Mark Nason and Claude Mangum were like dads in a way for me when I was in college, and really helped me to figure that out.
I feel like that's totally real,
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess, we're talking about like the whole first gen experience. So I guess we could kind of transition a bit to like the Jeffree Canada Scholars Program. You're like the professor in that. Like, what drew you in to become the professor for this program? Or like, how did that work?
Oh, good question. I can't speak with concrete evidence about how it works. Like how the program invited me, because I've taught in it 3 times. They've had four cohorts. I've taught 3 of them, and I'm teaching the next one. I don't know how did they pick me, or how did they ask me? I don't know. I think I've always, I don't know. I care. I care about the issues that the Jeffree Canada Scholars Program promotes. It promotes support for first generation college students. It gives resources. It gives mentoring. It gives counseling in terms of like academic counseling. It tries to create community. Like those things are really important to me. I guess the directors of the program knew that. I've always tried to do positive things with students of color at Bowdoin and first generation students, no matter where they come from. That's kind of like paying it forward. People did that for me. Yeah. So I want to be involved in that. I get energy out of that. Like that motivates me in my work. So I guess I had done things and in a positive way around those issues before the Jeffree Canada Scholars Program started. I have a lot of respect for the people at the Bowdoin Center for Teaching and for the Bowdoin Center for Learning and Teaching. Katie Burns, Meredith McCarroll, Eric Gaze, like those are just fantastic colleagues and educators and scholars. And so I guess when they developed the first program, the Thrive program talked to the people at the Bowdoin Center, and they came up with a curriculum, and part of it involved a writing component. And Meredith McCarroll, who runs the writing center, I did a lot of work with first year writing seminars. So I think Meredith must have said, Brian Purnell does a lot of work with writing. So maybe he could be a good person to teach this with me. And so Professor McCarroll and I co-taught that first summer. Oh, yeah. Oh, wow. So that's how I got involved in it. And I love it. I really enjoy it. I would hopefully, as long as I can balance my work, in the summer, I would do it as long as it was a positive contribution. Yeah.
Damn. No, first of all, thank you for that. Cause you introduced us to college level writing, and oh man.
Yeah. No, that first week was rough.
Yeah. I remember getting the feedback from my first essay, and my whole paper was scribbled front and back with just all these feedback. And I was like, whoa, what is this? But it was truly helpful. And now it's after taking America Dreams, I went into my first year writing seminar being okay, I'm ready for this heavy writing load. And then we had to turn in one essay every month. And I was like, oh, this is so easy. Yeah. Well, not to offend any of those.
No, that was the point. The point was to throw a lot. I don't want to make it sound like I intentionally overburdened, but I did intentionally try to create an intense
Right.
pace.
Yeah, that was very challenging.
So that when you went into your first year writing seminar or any humanities class, you would feel confident. That's my goal with first year writing seminars and with the summer course for the Jeffree Canada Scholars Program. I want the students to feel confident when they leave. So every student comes in with strengths. The strengths are different. Some students come in able to articulate ideas clearly when they speak, and when they write, they hit a roadblock. Some students come in able to write coherently, but they're not able to synthesize information from sources. Everybody comes in with different strengths. So the question is, how do you make their strengths stronger, and how do you strengthen their shortcomings or their weaknesses,
right,
so that they go into the semester confident and knowledgeable about, hey, this is what I do well, and these are the areas where I improved. That's the goal.
I think, I mean, I definitely fulfilled that goal, I think. Yeah. All right. So where do you see yourself? This is just a random question. Where do you see yourself in 5-10 years?
Yeah, I want to get better as a writer. I mean, I want to publish the scholarship that I've been working on the past few years. I'm working on 2 books. I want to, at minimum, I want to publish those books. But I want to improve as a writer. I've been doing a lot more writing for general audiences, you could say, trying to write for blogs and newspapers. And at some point, I'd like to try to publish in nonfiction magazines, The Atlantic, The New Yorker, Harper's, right? I want to improve as a writer. I want to try to bring my scholarship and my research to the broadest audiences possible. So in 5 or 10 years, I'm hoping to continue to be working on a research project, a book of some sort. I hope to have published the 2 that I've been working on. That's one goal. But I want to go for a Pulitzer or a National Book Award.
Wow.
I want to die working on a piece of writing and research that can be considered for some of the top awards for writing history. That's where I see myself. I see myself working on writing and trying to always improve in the craft.
I can respect that.
Yeah. Pretty ambitious. Not to say that it's, not feasible, because.
Well, I don't know if it's feasible. And I'm not saying in 10 years I'm going to. I mean, I don't think that. I think that would be hubris. And if I heard somebody say that, I would think 3 things. One, I'd be like, this guy is who are you? 2, I would be jealous. I'd be like, if somebody's like, I'm gonna win the National Book Award for nonfiction history, I'd be jealous. But the third thing that I would be respectful. I'd be like, all right, yeah, go ahead. That's great. Good for you. I hope you do it. You do it. So I don't articulate it. I don't say in 10 years, I'm going to win the National Book. I say in 10 years, I will be working on something that is that quality.
Yeah.
Because even if I do win it, I still want to be working. I still want to be working on a project that matters to me and that hopefully, matters to readers.
Yeah. This was another submitted question. Sapphire wanted to know, what is it like being a Black professor in this predominantly white school?
That is a tough one. Wow. Well, I'll answer it as succinctly as I can. But I'll try to hit all the different sides of it. So I'll answer the question. What is it like? It is wonderful for me as a Black man, as a person of African descent, as a man of color. It's wonderful to be at Bowdoin, because I have great colleagues. I have a handful of, people that I kind of consider family. My wife and I, we moved up here. We didn't know anybody. Like, we had no family. We didn't know anybody up here when we got here. So there are people that I work with, especially in Africana studies and some members of the history department. Like, these people are like my brothers and sisters. They're like my extended family up here. And because I feel loved and supported, I think that makes, and all aspects of my life, all aspects of who I am, I feel loved and supported. My professional side, my family. I mean, I don't want to give a long story, but there's a person who's retiring. I have to call by name. Like Roy Partridge was a professor here for many years in sociology, was an administrator. Like, I am convinced, I don't have direct evidence of this, but I am convinced. So I had the job, but my wife was a lawyer. She was a public defender. And so moving here would have meant her having to make a lot of adjustments. And I'm convinced that Roy Partridge and this man he's deceased, Will Smith, who is my age, he's my contemporary. I think that they did a tremendous amount of work to help my wife find employment here at Bowdoin. My wife worked at Bowdoin for 8 years. And I think Roy and Will and Tim Foster and the former president, Barry Mills, I think that they all came together. But I don't have evidence for this because I wasn't in the rooms. But I think Roy Partridge did a tremendous amount of advocacy to create support around my wife getting employment in the student affairs division. She worked as the dean of multicultural student life and programming. And I think, Tim Foster, who used to be the dean, and Roy Partridge did a lot of work, and Will Smith did a lot to make that happen. So that's one, I can't, for me, I've experienced love and support, like enormous love and support. And so
that's awesome. That
makes my experience wonderful and encouraging and positive. There's some things that are hard about being Black and about being a person of color at a predominantly white institution. You just have to. There's a lot. And again, not everybody's like this. So it's because of where I'm from and where I grew up and what college was like for me. People help me. And so I want to help people. When I was in graduate school, Dr. Nason encouraged me, and that helped me to go to graduate school. When I was in graduate school, the other Black and Latino graduate students, we supported each other. The program, the professors, a lot of them, encouraged us in our scholarship. If you don't have that from professors, your peers, your administrators, and you're in a different environment, a different place, different class status, and there's not a lot of people that look like you, that come from where you came from, it's and I don't know if the word is intimidating. It's strange. How do you find your footing? So
yeah,
because that happened for me in positive ways, I try to involve myself in ways to be positive for others. That can be a challenge, right? Like it's to balance your teaching. I'm a writer. I need time to write. I need time to do research. Bowdoin gives you a lot as a professor. Bowdoin gives you a lot of resources, which is a euphemism for money. So, but when there's a lot of demands on your time, it can be very hard to manage that. So there's challenges in being a person of color at a predominantly white institution when there's a lot of need. People are just going to go to you for things, and sometimes it's hard to say no. But so you have to find balance. That's tricky. So that's hard. The last way I'll answer this is, I think being a person of color or being black. So my father's white, my mother's black. My mother was born in this place in Barbados. Barbados is an island in the West Indies. It was it's an Anglophonic society. It was an English colony. That's my history. So for me, I'm light-skinned or light-skinned, as we might say. Bayesians would say it in different ways. They might say red bone. They might say fair skin, light-skinned. I think that color shapes the way you flow in when you're not white in places that are nothing but. I think so. I think gender. So I am a man, or rather, I am gender and sexuality. I am a straight man. I think that all those things combine in the way that people read you.
Right.
So for me to be light-skinned, people read me different. And to be straight, people read you different. In a place like this, like Bowdoin is predominantly white, predominantly rich, predominantly Protestant, liberal, predominantly straight, right? So that's the way I flow is shaped by all of that. And so here's one of the weird things. Like, it's weird to hear from someone, because I grew up in Brooklyn. I grew up around, working class people, did not read some of the things that I read, like did not have a Western education. Like they didn't read philosophy and theology and Shakespeare. And so, sometimes like who I am normal comes out and people will say like, oh, wow, you really sound really urban sometimes. So it's like,
yeah.
Oh, okay. I mean, that's kind of weird, but whatever. There'll be just awkward moments where you could still have colleagues, like you'll be on a search, right? Like you'll be hiring a new professor. And, for me, whatever the search is, like we have to pay attention to diversity. Like we have to have a diverse pool. We have to try to recruit from like HBCUs. Like if we're hiring an American historian, like let's go to Howard University. Let's talk to the director of graduate studies. Let's see who's coming through the pipeline. Let's go to the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. Let's go to the Association for the Study of the Worldwide African Diaspora. Let's go to, all the different historical associations where people of color are going. Let's go to the Women's History Association. Let's try to really recruit for diversity. You still will have somebody say like, well, if we pay attention to that, are we sacrificing quality? And it's kind of like, really, are we really still having that conversation? Yeah. Like, do I really need to be the one to be the one in the room to explain like why? So things like that are, it is what it is. It is what it is. We didn't call it microaggressions. So there's a language for that. Now, when I was growing up or whatever, what we now call microaggressions was just, life. It was just dealing with people and moving on and like finding a way to move on without internalizing it and having it give you an ulcer, which is hard. So I come back to love and support, encouragement. And I've just been very fortunate. I've had that in abundance. Did that answer? You think that answered her question? That was a hard one.
That was a hard question. But
that was a good one though.
I think people needed to hear that.
Yeah, it was a good one.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Sapphire. Always keeping me honest, pushing me to be better. Sapphire. Oh wait, we're not supposed to say last name. You could edit that out.
I mean, I don't.
yeah. Put the beep on there.
I got you, Sapphire.
Yeah.
All right. Do you have any like just last words you want to say? Anything you want to promote? Anything you want to just like address? Any advice? And whatever. The floor is yours for like
promote
whatever you want to say. I mean, I only get like 10 listeners. I'll be honest,
but
that's still okay.
June 9th.
I appreciate all 10 of you.
June 9th, Amazon Audible. Check it out.
Oh yeah.
I did it's called The Great Courses. It's an audio podcast downloadable project. It's called The History of Brooklyn. There's 11 episodes that comes out June 9th. Amazon Audible, The Great Courses, The History of Brooklyn. Narrated, written, researched by Brian Purnell.
Oh yeah.
So, get it for your moms, get it for your grandmother. That's one thing I would promote. I mean, what else? Gosh, I don't know. I think that everybody has had a really hard 2 years. And, for some people, the past 2 years made the hard things, the difficult things in their life even harder.
Yeah.
So I guess the one thing I would say is, please, try to find a way to connect with a friend, a loved one. Reach out if you haven't. It's never too late to just say hi to someone is one thing I would say as a way of, I'm not going to say coming out of COVID, but moving forward in positive ways. I just think we need to do a lot of repair with the ways that we've been disconnected, the distrust, the rancor. There's just been a lot of anxiety, divisiveness, and disconnect. And I think we need to do things in positive ways to come out of that. And I think small things matter. So I think calling people, sending letters, saying thank you, gratitude. One thing I think that can get you out of being in a funk could be to express gratitude to someone. Another way to deal with anxiety, because that's coming up a lot, which is good. It's good people are talking about it. And I would say, talk about it, and I would also say, find comfortable ways to develop awareness about anxiety, because all anxiety is not the same. Anxiety is natural. I felt a little anxious coming on this show. Before the mics turned on, I was turning to Miguel to be like, yo, what's going to happen? because anxiety is real, right? Now, anxiety is a real part of life. And managing anxiety the past 2 years with being worried about being sick, getting loved ones sick, all that stuff is just heightened. So I think we need to find ways to recognize different levels of anxiety and to talk about it and to get help when we need it, especially if the anxiety is, clinical and has physical, mental effects.
Right.
Beyond, the normal breaking out of your homeostasis and then self-regulation, right? Then there's things we need to do to try to figure out like techniques to self-regulate when anxiety kicks up. And then there's like, yo, this anxiety, what I'm experiencing is just off the charts, right? Like I can't handle this by myself. I need help, right? Like saying that, talking about it with your friends, with your professors, and and finding positive ways, healthy ways to work through it is just crucial. It's always been crucial. I think it's been even more crucial with the last 2 years. So that's what I would say. Make connections, reach out to people, express gratitude. I guess the last thing that's related to the two is just like, yo, we've been so on edge. You know what I'm saying? Like, and understandably so. People have just been on edge. We have a lot of reason to be on edge. You know, I mean, I could go through a list, right? Like the fears that people had of their family, you know, being deported, put people on edge. Fears of encounters with violence put people on edge, whether that violence came from the police or whether, you know, your kin was police and they felt fear of going into a demonstration and experiencing violence, right? Like being political and going to demonstrations and being fearful of violence. The mean-spiritedness of national language. It's like social media vacuums. Like everybody's just been on edge, at each other, distrustful of each other. It's like, oh, I'm wearing a mask and you're not wearing a mask, right?
Yeah.
So like, you out to kill me. It's like, nah, man, yo, chill. Like, or I am not wearing a mask and you are wearing a mask and you're looking at me like, you know, I'm the worst thing, right? Like all this stuff. I think we can turn the heat down a little bit in some things, and figure out healthy ways how to turn the heat up, you know, in healthy, positive ways where people do need to fight for the rights that are being taken away from them. People do need to assert like, nah, wait a second, you know, that particular ideology, that particular language, like that can do a lot of harm. I'm not trying to censor you, but I am just trying to say like, we need to move in directions that don't get people hurt, that bring people together, don't take people apart. I think that there's a way to combine those two things, the self-care, the health, the gratitude, and the recognition of anxiety. How do we go step a bit back from the edge? Because if we don't do that and get a handle on things, you know, January 6th was terrifying. I think that was one of the scariest things that I've seen. I don't want my children to live with the threat of insurrection and coup and violent overthrows of the government, right? Like, so as citizens, we need to kind of step away from the ledge a bit and be a little bit more patient with each other, but also know when, where, and how to say like, listen, you know, what you're saying, what you're doing, you may have a right to say it, but let me just say like, it's dangerous, it's destructive to me, and here's why. I wish you peace. I wish you well, but you know, we're on opposite sides of this. It doesn't mean I hate you. It doesn't mean I hate your family, but we're going to disagree about this. And we might not even be agreeable about it. We might be disagreeable about it, but we got to find a way to move forward without killing each other. Otherwise we're lost. And I can't accept that. I don't want to accept that. So that's my last thing. Like, we got to turn the temperature down in some ways, but we got to turn it up in others, in ways that don't lead to self-destruction. That's all I got.
Thank you for joining us, Dr. Purnell.
All right.
Amen, bro.
Yeah.
All who have ever listened over the course of my first year.
The studio audience. Thank you. They're applauding in the background. Yeah. Well, hey, man, thank you for doing this and thanks for having me on it. Just to be able to sit and share with both of you is wonderful. It's uplifting, and I appreciate you doing this.
This is why I do the show.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. All right. Subscribe. You know, feel free to leave any comments. Next week, I'm most likely going to take a break to focus on finals. So we'll catch you the following week. And I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. This has been On Dr. Purnell's Mind.
Yeah.
See you guys later. All right. Bye.
Bye.